I do play one of her hecklers, Andy, the red-haired girl who stabs her. Link, who was one of her protectors. She had Danny, who was, of course, her soldier, bodyguard. But, you know, as the 101st Cutback Division, you know, she had to have a new protector, and that was Link. And he would give her inside information about what the segregationists had planned to do to them next.
Yes.
And, you know, they're miscellaneous, I don't want to say miscellaneous, but characters who call and heckle them. But
and you play male characters. I mean, in addition to Danny and the heckler, but you've got you play Melba's dad.
Yes.
And you play the principal and the chief of police.
Governor Faubus.
And the governor, the president, even
President
at
Eisenhower.
one point. That's a lot. So, Richard, I'm going to jump to you now and say, as a director, how do you help an actor to perform those roles, all those many roles, to differentiate them and to, you know, not only for the audience, but for the actor? How do you keep that straight in the head?
Well, it's not what I have to keep straight in the head, it's what she has to keep straight in the head. But I think part of, I hope, what the success of this will be is that I got to work with Almeria on an earlier project this spring that was around Katrina. The subject was Katrina, basically. And recognized right away that she's a very talented actress. So the success of directing is casting. And I'm lucky that we crossed paths when we did. And what she brings with her to this role that you know, some of the things that I don't have are that innate sense of African-American history. But what's been interesting in the process for me is watching her create all these roles, like you're saying. So we began to talk about, well, how would a white boy carry himself as opposed to a black boy?
How would he what?
Carry himself. What's his physical posture? What is that? So she does play Ernest Green, who is one of the Little Rock Nine, and his body language is totally different from Link's. And beginning to look at that, beginning to look at movement and how they carry themselves, and then the dialect. And Almeria is very gifted with dialect, which is it's a great thing that I didn't know about, sort of lucked out there. And so she began with the voice, which is great. Each of them has their own voice. Each of them has their own physical life. And then how they express themselves is through those two things. I think one of the things, the feedback that I get from Almeria is in transitioning from one to the other, it's the movement that helps her know who she is or where she is. It's the physical gesture that puts her in place and lets her find that voice. What's been interesting is sometimes when we go back to the table and she's just reading, I see the physical life come forward even though she's just sitting. Which means she's got the character now in her body, and the homework has been successful.
But it also means that you have the ability to observe something then that probably the average person does not, in terms of being able to see physicality while someone is just reading something.
Yeah, I hope I do. I mean, I hope I had good training. But yeah, actors have language and they have their bodies. And I think we all do this. We all judge other people by how they carry themselves. There are a lot of cues that are sent that are unspoken about how someone feels that day or how they communicate something. You can say hello to somebody, and it can be hello, and it can be hello.
Yes.
It's all in the delivery, so it's all a physical thing.
So, Almeria, let me come back to you then with all of these multiple personalities you're dealing with.
Yes.
Do you find that you have favorites? I was going to ask, well, let me ask first, are some easier than others? I mean, I would think portraying a female would be easier than portraying a male, but not necessarily.
See, that's the thing. I don't find that one is harder than the other. I would say that I have favorites, though.
Okay.
You have characters that you can definitely have fun with. The red-haired girl.
Yeah.
Love her.
We love her.
We call her Evil L, but that's an inside joke.
Okay.
But I think that there are people that you really, really enjoy playing. But I think the mother was the hardest for me to isolate because there's Grandma, Melba, and then Mother. And Melba has similarities to both women because they feed her. And as I grow throughout the play, as I play Melba and I grow throughout the play, I begin to incorporate mother and grandmother. But the grandmother is so distinct. I had her down, but the mother, she was the one that I really had to work the hardest on, and now I've gotten her isolated. But I would say she was the most challenging.
And do you find yourself characterizing in your mind, labeling the characters with a word or two, so that when you are portraying that character, you're remembering, okay, this person is a diplomat, or this person is forceful, or something like that?
Like an archetype?
Yes.
No, it's innate. It's innate in my body. What I do is the gesture, because the gesture feeds me. I innately know who the character is, but the gesture will feed me into how they live their life, moment to moment,
okay,
in the play. So, yes.
So the question that I know all the kids ask when we do a show like this, and I know they're going to ask you, and I want to know myself, how do you memorize so much material?
Oh my goodness.
Because we're talking, by the time we finish, it's going to be, maybe 40 pages, single spaced, although obviously a lot of dialogue. We're not talking, that every page is heavily text. But are there some kind of little tricks that you can use to memorize?
The gesture. You give yourself a movement. Richard, he understands the acting background that I come from. And although I'm Meisner trained, I do work sensorially. So you work through the senses. And so he was like, well, attach movement. It's like dancing. I know that if I do the pas de bourrée, that this comes next. In the dance, that's how it is with the memorizing my lines on stage. It's you're marrying movement to behavior. And the behavior, from that behavior, out comes your line. It's like, oh, I know when I do this, when I slam my hand down on the bench, this is my line that comes next. And it feeds my behavior for the character.
I see. So they're constant cues. You just have to give yourself the cue as well as the line.
I have to give myself the cue. And when I don't have something memorized well, I know it's because my cue isn't memorized well. It's not in my, I don't want to say memorized well, it's not in my body yet. Once it becomes organic in my body, then I move.
Wonderful. I'm fascinated by that. I've never tried anything like that. Don't expect to, but I'm fascinated by it. But a sort of a larger concept I wanted to talk with both of you about, the idea that, members of my writing community, we, we often talk about how writers are attracted to certain themes, whether we want to believe that or not. But for instance, for me, I always find myself writing about sibling relationships, and the siblings are always sisters. Even when I don't start out to write that, that's always where the story winds up. So do you find that you are attracted to certain themes? Have you developed, do you seek to develop a thumbprint for your body of work? So Almeri, let me stay with you for a minute and ask you that question.
I would love to say yes, but I'm an actor who likes to work. So as long as I haven't really come across any work that I would say no to yet, for me it's all about the journey of the character. So what journey is this character going on? And am I willing to forget what I wouldn't do and only do what that character would do and go on the journey? So I can't quite say that I've developed a palette for a certain genre or things that I like to do. I'm very big into African American culture and history. So automatically I was drawn to this piece. I just haven't been given enough pieces like this to do. And I'm a host for a Black playwright, playwrights writing session. So I get to see a lot of these things, but they deal with themes that are now as opposed to historical.
50 years ago?
Yeah, they don't deal with historical themes. And I think